Okay, I'm going to start. Good evening. I'd like to call this reconvened regular council meeting to order. First, of course, we acknowledge we're on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and really look forward to working with them. Thank them for caring for this land, and look forward to working with them as we build this great city together. And of course, want to thank the staff for all their fantastic work, day in and day out. The city wouldn't be what it is without them. Can we have the roll call, please, Clerk?
Mayor Stewart in the chair. Councillor Carr. Here. Councillor DeGenova. Present. Councillor Fry. Here. Councillor Swanson. Here. Councillor Hardwick. Councillor Wiebe. Here. Councillor Boyle. Councillor Dominato is not in the chamber. Councillor Bly. Here. Councillor Kirby-Young, not in the chamber. You have quorum, Mayor Stewart. Thanks
very much. And just before we get back into the business of city plan, there's a couple administrative things. To accommodate staff, we're suggesting we vary the order of the agenda just quickly to hear Administrative Report 8 that was held for questions by a councillor as the first order of business, and we understand now the councillor doesn't have questions, so that would allow it to go through and release staff for the evening. Then we'll continue. Okay, I'll just finish the suggestion here. We'll continue with questions, debate, and decision on Report Reference 1, the citywide plan. And based on staff advice and considering the length of time it will take to deal with Administrative Report 8 and the citywide plan, we suggest that Administrative Reports 6 and 7 be dealt with tomorrow. So, okay, thanks very much. So just so you know, it's going to be, tomorrow we're starting at 4 p.m. and the staff and speakers have been advised that we might make this change. Okay, thanks very much. We got to move. We have a seconder for that. Okay, thank you, Councillor Carr. All in favor of varying the agenda? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that's varied. Thanks very much. So in varying of the agenda tonight, I suggest we vary the order of the agenda to deal with, sorry. I suggest we vary the order of the agenda to deal with Administrative Report 8 as the first order of business. Somebody like to move that? Thank you. Oh, great. Sorry, I didn't see you there. Okay.
I understand there are no questions. I have nothing further to say. I just wanted to move the motion.
Okay, thanks. Seconder for that? Second. Okay, Councillor Dominato, thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? Oh, that's okay. Thanks very much. So that's varied. Did I do that right? Okay, so we have a new addition in the building bylaw now as our first order of business. Would someone like to move the motion?
So moved.
Thank you, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Fry. And we're going to vote now.
Yep.
Councillor Fry. And Councillor Kirby-Young. Okay, would you like a vote assist? Okay. Okay, thanks. That's unanimously passed. Thanks very much. So we are back to report reference. So we're continuing with report reference 1, a citywide plan for Vancouver, report back to general planning engagement process. Council, are there any questions? Seeing none, just kidding. Okay, so great. So if you want questions to staff, of course, put yourself on the queue. And we got Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just send my questions in by mail, so I'm wondering if they are just going to come, if you have a report back on the answers to the questions, in which case I won't read them out. I'll just listen to the report back, just checking.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks very much.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Susan Haid, Deputy Director of Long Range Strategic Planning, and our team is very pleased to be here this evening to answer questions that you may have about the citywide plan, proposed planning and engagement strategy. I'll just kick off by giving sincere regrets from our General Manager and Chief Planner, Gil Kelly, who is away on a scheduled vacation and would love to be here and didn't anticipate that we would be scheduled tonight. So he's been very involved and is probably watching as well. We received a number of questions from Council arising from the July 9th Council meeting where this item was presented. We have prepared a memo to Council responding to these that was circulated yesterday and is available on the website as well. So I'll just kick off by briefly summarizing the responses to the questions in the memo, and then we'd be pleased to respond to any further questions. So to summarize briefly, we received a number of questions that were really relating to the participation of neighborhood groups, neighborhood advisory groups, how they will be involved, and whether neighborhood planning will be included as part of the process. And also whether community and neighborhood groups can make specific submissions as part of participating in the citywide plan, and what kind of resources they may have access to. So again, these are itemized in the memo, but broadly, the proposed planning and engagement process before you is a very broad and emergent process. And we do propose embarking initially very much on a listening and an inquiry phase and gaining feedback to help guide and further design the process. We do propose taking very much a citywide approach and perspective to planning, but also ensuring to mesh that with neighborhood level and local planning. And so really, we acknowledge that the success of the plan will depend on engaging all parties, looking citywide, but very much engaging with communities at the local level, including neighborhoods. And so the proposed process includes a number of principles and very broad strategies for outreach to all community groups, including neighborhood groups, neighborhood associations, heritage groups, and others. And some of the tools and principles are really based on going to groups, and bringing forward things like toolkits, going to groups we have a proposed mobile pop-up office, and bringing resources to groups so that they can easily participate and that they can also lead their own engagements at the neighborhood and at the community group level. So we very much welcome participation, input, and submissions by all groups as part of the process. It is very much our plan to develop an interactive website where we would also be able to receive these submissions and share them very broadly. The staff report also specifically on page 13 addresses and notes resources beyond the general engagement tools to support participation of groups that may require additional supports and may have barriers to participation. For example, those supports may relate to advanced language support, such as facilitators. We would have translation of materials as a rule overall. Groups, for example, that have barriers of poverty, disabilities. And so the proposed budget does include resources to specifically support more vulnerable groups. There was a question in those that we received about participation of our advisory committees and also whether we might be establishing an advisory committee specifically for the citywide plan. And so we very much propose and articulate in the report engaging all of our advisory committees. And in fact, typically for community and citywide planning processes, we not only go to those advisory groups based on their specific interest area, but we typically pull them all together into one forum at key milestones. And so for the citywide plan, we would very much do that with our advisory committees, our commissions, and bring together those representatives both at their groups and collectively at key milestones. We would be happy to report back on that as part of phase one, and if there's further adaptation in terms of advisory groups, we can look at that. We don't propose establishing a specific advisory group at this time. There was another question that asked whether there is a specific terms of reference for the planning and engagement process and whether we would establish an interim rezoning policy to essentially preclude rezoning applications while planning is underway. And so actually the report before you is very much responding to Council's motion of November 2018 and the request for a high-level planning and engagement process. And it is essentially the terms of reference identifying the estimated resource needs, the proposed project structure, the general governance principles for roles of staff, community council, advisory committees, et cetera. And so that is the terms of reference, including the appendices, which is fairly consistent with many of the terms of reference for other planning initiatives. In terms of an interim rezoning policy, staff do not recommend an explicit interim rezoning policy, given this is a citywide process and it is higher level than a local area or community plan. It acknowledges that we recommend proceeding under existing policies, so community plan policies, policy statements, and citywide policies. This also really acknowledges some of the urgencies that Council's identified related to the housing crisis, the climate crisis, and really keeping the business of City Hall moving forward as we proceed. The framework for planning, nonetheless, enables the ability to update citywide and community plan policies, ideally as we complete a draft of the plan. All of this at any time is really subject to Council's full control. And with regard to rezoning applications, we typically are forwarding you those that are consistent with policies for your determination of decisions. So again, Council has full control over decision-making or changes to that process. So there was a related question asking whether we would continue to implement and bring forward applications under Rental 100, the Moderate Income Rental Housing Pilot Project, the Affordable Housing Choices Policy applications. And yes, as I really just explained, these are all existing citywide policies. They do require technical analysis, design analysis, community consultation as part of those citywide policies. Some of those policies are actually quite long-standing in terms of Rental 100, Affordable Housing Choices Policy. Really, its original origin was housing demonstration projects and then the interim rezoning policy. So in keeping with the report, it is proposed that these applications and these policies continue to be brought forward for Council consideration. We acknowledge and highlight that staff, our housing policy staff, are busily working per Council's direction on a review of the rental incentive program. Our staff team will be reporting to Council just in terms of an update of that work program at next week's Council meeting, and it's anticipated that further potential policy updates would be brought forward to you later this year. So really, a key message in terms of citywide planning and existing policy implementation is very much that they are coordinated and connected, and they are always in your control in terms of decision-making. And very much a related question that we received was asking about concurrent planning initiatives, such as the Broadway Plan, and asking whether if we receive community feedback that could potentially modify or curtail this process, is that something that Council can respond to? So yes, as I mentioned, very much Council can respond and adapt both the citywide and concurrent planning processes based on its decision-making authority and reflecting public feedback. We would acknowledge, again, the Broadway Plan is very much coordinated and connected, and I think it can really be thought of as a key component of the citywide plan. many of these concurrent initiatives have partnership, funding, and timing requirements that we are essentially integrating into the citywide plan. So in the case of the Broadway plan, I believe to date the team has engaged over 9,000 in the process so far. It's still early days in terms of feedback on emerging principles, which have been to date well received, but again, can very adeptly be integrated into the citywide planning process. Another question that we received is whether local area plans, I think it was mentioned the West End plan, could they be amended as a quick start as part of the citywide plan process? So ideally, Council would consider amendments to community plans holistically, ideally as we complete the citywide plan, so that we can make any amendments in a coordinated way, essentially looking at all of our plans within an implementation and monitoring framework. That said, again, it's Council's purview, if there is a quick start that's emerging through community feedback, to consider that. And we will report on those and that feedback as we go along in the process. I think it's important to acknowledge that many of our planning processes at the community level, such as the Marpole Community Plan, involved quick starts that were really emerged based on community feedback. And in that case, they involved aspects such as enhancements to the local transportation network, and the parklet system. So just a couple more questions to highlight and then really over to Council. It was asked whether the citywide plan will essentially create a plan that will include rezoning broadly. And will this framework stop potential spot rezonings? And so, as described in the report, it is intended that part of the scope of the citywide plan includes creation of a spatial framework or a map. We don't anticipate the level of detail of that map is at the level of zoning or density. But certainly, it's an amazing opportunity, which we don't currently have in our planning frameworks, to have a spatial framework that looks at the whole city and identifies areas for growth, areas that may not be for change, areas for protection in terms of our green environmental network. We would anticipate that spatial framework would inform more detailed implementation planning and more zoning changes in the future. I did want to highlight that the well over 90% and the vast majority of applications that Council receives and considers are all based on community plans and within a policy framework. So citywide policies, community plans, and we really have very few spot rezonings, and it is the intention, as reflected in the report, that spot rezonings where there is no policy framework would not be brought forward to Council during citywide planning. So just lastly, there was a really key question about how will the pace of change be addressed in the plan. And I think this is actually a really incredible opportunity, again, to be able to look citywide, recognizing currently our planning structure is more area-based and broken up, to look citywide and look at and gain feedback on the desired pace of change, but to develop a really strong implementation and monitoring framework so that we can report back on progress and change and really guide change, manage change, monitor change, and adapt for change. Lastly, there was a key question about the protection of public views as part of the citywide plan process and whether that would be addressed considering both natural views and built environment views. And we just wanted to highlight that a component of the analysis, looking really at our urban design framework and really our what is significant about our natural and built environment. We will be assessing views. It wouldn't be the level of detail of the plan to undertake a detailed review of view cones, but certainly at a policy level to acknowledge, identify, and create policy around view maintenance, protection, enhancement to then guide further detailed guidelines such as view cones would be how the citywide plan is envisaged to address views. So overall, our report is seeking Council's endorsement to really get started on the citywide plan through a robust outreach, engagement, and listening phase, and to identify key values and principles through engagement to shape long-term planning for our amazing city. So we are requesting your approval of the recommendations in the staff report, and we have staff here from many departments to assist in responding to questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Looking at the speakers queue, Councillor Dejanova, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask a question to staff.
Please do. Yep.
Thank you. My question was specifically around housing and wanting to make sure that we weren't going to be stopping the work in such a critical and crucial time. We have a housing crisis that we're dealing with. We're trying to make sure that more people are housed, that housing is more affordable. I understand that we're receiving a housing update. I've had people reach out to me asking if this is going to in any way disrupt that work. I understand that at the end of this, there might be a new way forward and some recommendations, but hoping that staff might be able to elaborate a little bit on how people could expect that to change the landscape of where things are, especially considering housing is something that I think we've all said is very important here at this council.
Yes. So thank you for your question. And it is our recommendation in the report to essentially keep proposals that relate to existing policies, both area-based and citywide, which really currently emphasize affordable housing to council for consideration. So some of those development proposals are essentially outright and development permitting, but many of them are associated with rezonings, which are tied to existing policy. So as staff, we've been really prioritizing affordable housing applications, both in terms of rental, affordable rental, social housing, MERP, our short program. Unless otherwise directed by council, we would continue to move forward expediently on all of those. And as you mentioned, Councillor Dejanova, staff will be providing an update on the review of the rental incentives policy next week, and also has doing really deep dive work both on rental protection, but on the rental incentives policy, and would intend to continue to bring those forward to council. So it's very much an action while planning, with council very much the regulator of that.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for answering all my questions. That was great. I do have one more arising out of correspondence that has come into Mayor and Council, and that is regarding community amenities, and a question about at what stage in the plan would community amenities come up, or how would it come up in order to be dealt with in terms of people's recognition that it's a really important part of livability here?
Thank you for the question. It's a great question. And I think as part of really citywide planning, it's a great opportunity for us to look at amenities in terms of existing amenities, what kind of growth we anticipate or want to plan for in the future beyond our current regional growth strategy target of 2041. So moving beyond that and looking at frameworks, for example, equity framework with regard to existing, really looking at what are our needs, what do we have now, what are our needs, what are our directions. More detailed policies would arise resulting from the citywide plan as part of implementation or action while planning, which really looks at public benefit strategy. So the citywide plan does include and intend to include a public investment strategy. So really a high-level amenities and infrastructure plan, looking out long range, and then more detailed delivery would arise through implementation.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much. I see nobody else on the list. Any more questions for staff? Okay, I think you're off the hook. Thanks very much. So would somebody like to move the motion then to consider this? Councillor Carr, thank you. Councillor Kirby-Young seconded. And if you'd like to speak to this debate, go ahead, Councillor Fry first.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I submitted an amendment to the clerk, and this also includes some follow-up feedback from staff. Let me just pull it up myself so I know what I'm talking about. So one of the, oh, and there it is too. So one of the addition of the word "and co-creation," this is a reflection of my own experience in conversations with planning staff about the difference between consultation and co-creation. Co-creation being a process that's more engaged and provides an opportunity for input. Oh, am I supposed to be standing?
Sorry.
My apologies. Okay. Pardon me. And further that, and referencing that what is generally reflected in this report already. The second consideration to this amendment is really diving in. We've heard from residents associations and the like who would like more input. I think it's important to articulate where the opportunity for place-based lens to consultation and co-creation without explicitly referencing any one group or the other. It's an opportunity to just reflect that we would like to see that opportunity to have that place-based, the rooted in what's local, so the unique histories, environments, culture, economy, literature, and art of a particular place, inclusive of neighborhoods, communities, collective experience, and localized interests within the larger context of the citywide planning that is informed by equity, accessibility, spatial justice, and the fundamental right to housing. So I want to articulate, too, that not all the definitions of neighborhoods are necessarily coherent, and we have different interpretations of what a neighborhood is or isn't. So this is more of a generalized, let's consider the place when we consider the planning opportunity. So that is my amendment.
Okay. Okay, so we would need a seconder for this amendment. I saw Councillor Weep's hand first, so we're moving over to the amendment queue. Councillor Dejanova, please go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
I do have a point of information.
Okay.
And just to you, Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering how staff would interpret this, because I'm seeing a lot of this talks about neighborhoods, communities. A lot of this I'm already seeing in the report, and just wondering how staff would interpret this direction differently.
Is there a particular part of it that you like?
All of it, because neighborhoods, communities, collective experience, I see that in the report already. So I'm just asking a point of information to you as to how, and if you, maybe through you, if you'll allow it, because this is a staff report. I do think that it's important to know how staff are going to interpret this, because co-creation.
Sure.
Yep.
I'll give it a shot, Mr. City Manager. Point of information about how staff might interpret this this amendment. And I guess we might start with place-based.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. We do have staff here. I'm open to how you want to have the questions go during this debate process.
You wanted to defer to another staff member? That's
I'd be happy to defer to the experts on this one.
Sure.
Susan, do you
And
want
I do
to
have
speak
one
to that?
more question.
Yes, I think as Councillor Fry really summarized at a high level, in terms of a place-based approach that's reflecting just the various qualities of neighborhoods and different special areas of the city, that it's our intention to take that kind of an approach, and that in terms of co-creation, I think the inclusion of, as generally reflected in the report, is helpful in that there is some identification as part of the terms of reference of roles. And so in a nutshell, I would indicate that it's staff's intention to undertake planning in this manner. It's council's purview whether to articulate it explicitly or not.
Thank you. Oh, maybe stay there. Sorry, just to follow up through
Is
you.
it specifically on this amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's talking about, it's the last sentence that concerns me specifically, just because I know that there have been some legal issues and matters. And I just, for the comfort of making sure that, there's nothing here that seems out there to me. And as I said, I think it's covered in the report, but using the words that we are going to be supporting a fundamental right to housing, I'm just wondering if that legally would put the City of Vancouver in any type of position.
Okay.
Thank you.
So through you,
to, if I might,
you, sure.
through the chair, legal doesn't have any concerns with this.
Okay. Thank you.
Satisfied? Okay. Thanks very much. Great. Anybody else like to speak to this one? Oh, Councillor Carr.
Yeah, just to say that as the originator of the original motion, I think that, first of all, there was language like this in the original motion. So I think that that this is reiterating some of the ideas that were captured when Council moved this in December of 2018. And I'm just happy to see that reiterated. And I think it's really, it gets at a concern I think that's been raised by many people and a desire by many people to see place-based processes and engagement happen through the plan. So I'm very supportive of this amendment.
Thanks very much. I actually, I can't really ask a question about this because perhaps I can ask a point of clarification on this. Yeah, I really can't. Okay, I won't. Procedurally, I can't. So, no, that's okay. So I think that's it for questions on this. Thanks very much. So we'll go to the vote if there's no more questions. Just waiting for Councillor Kirby-Young, Dominato, and DeGenova. Councillor Dominato. And thank you, everybody. That's passed unanimously. Okay, so back to the main queue. Councillor Swanson.
Yeah, I submitted an amendment. The latest one. Just asking for an intersectional lens. It's gone back and forth between a few of us. I hope it's okay.
Do you want to speak any? Nope, that's it. Okay. So we need a seconder for this one. I saw Councillor Boyle's hand first, so we'll go there. Councillor DeGenova.
Another point of information, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much.
I'm just wondering if, through you to staff, if you'll allow, the point of information is I had thought that we had, as a council, agreed in the women's equity strategy to put an intersectional lens, including gender, racial, and ethno-cultural, age, income, and ability on all of the work we do here at the city. So I'm wondering if I understand staff have taken that direction and incorporated it into their report. So I'm just wondering what's next, the amendment on reconciliation, because we're a city of reconciliation, we're committed to that. But I feel that that's thoroughly in the report. So I was going to ask you a point of information through staff. Is this already being done, or should I be doing this with every single motion that comes to council? If so, then I guess I'll just have that amendment ready to go for every motion.
Great. Thanks very much. So I guess the question is to staff, is this already covered by our current policy, which I can't bring right to mind at the moment, but I remember when we had the gender equity policy, we added intersectional lens, I believe, to all policies, but perhaps it'd be useful to review the actual text of what our policy is, and maybe you can help me with that, City Manager.
Certainly, through the chair. I guess this is a little bit like the last motion, where we were intending to do that work in that way, but you're articulating it as something you want to see kind of front and center. We are certainly taking an intersectional lens to this work and planning. That will be a core part of what we're doing in many ways that differentiates this plan from what we've done in the past and what's been done elsewhere in many cases. So that's certainly our intention at this point.
Yeah, and would a staff member here, I mean, actually think we should look at that policy just to, what we passed in the last council meeting. So I'd like to take just a few minutes to do that, just to properly answer the question here of whether or not if this is just restating something we're already doing, or is it something different? So,
For a 5-minute recess?
yeah, I'm just take a 5-minute recess so I can review this policy and then properly answer the point of order. Actually, is what it is. Yeah. So take 5 minutes. Can I have a seconder for that one? Thank you, Councillor Bly. All in favor? Any opposed? No, we're good. Thanks very much. So we'll take 5 minutes so I can review that policy. Okay, Council, so there's been a question about this amendment, and my co-chairs and I, the Councillor Carr and Councillor Dejanova and the clerks, we've had our kind of special training sessions and discussions on how we're chairing and various motions. So I'll just draw your attention to our procedures bylaw, section 4.3. This is an amendment motion that we're considering, and the chair may refuse to open a motion for debate if the chair decides the motion is out of order because it, and what we'll be looking at is F. And although the word isn't the one I would use, how it's interpreted under F is frivolous. And frivolous means not that it has not that it doesn't have meaning, meaning that we've already done it. That's how this is interpreted through various writings on these. And the reason that this would be frivolous is because we've actually already done it. So when we passed the gender equity report, there was an addition of intersectionality in that report, and the final motion is approved by council. Section C is that council directs staff to develop a comprehensive gendered intersectional strategy with short and long-term goals that are measurable for, and this is the important part, each department and every strategy. So when we passed that motion back on May 29th, it means that we are applying an intersectional lens to every single department and policy strategy that we do. So that's a guaranteed. Checking with staff is when they're developing citywide plan, it will be done already with an intersectional lens. And so in the interpretation of a motion that comes forward that's repeating something that's already been passed and undertaken, that would be considered, although again, I don't like the rule, it's the name, but it's frivolous. And so that would be considered out of order. And sure. I'm trying to turn your mic on here, but I can't for some reason. Oh, it's because you're for some reason your mic's not working. Oh, there it goes. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Swanson.
Yeah, so if it's in the policy, let's make sure that it says that it's in the policy in the report.
Right. So there's no actual response. That's my ruling, so it's out of order. Your recourse is the challenge to chair, of course, but that's all you have after ruling. And I've given my reasons for the ruling, and there we are. So on to the next person in the queue. I have Councillor Dominato.
Oh, sorry. That was a holdover from earlier. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Boyle.
This is just the regular.
I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong. It was Councillor Swanson. Anything else, Councillor Swanson? Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Thank you. I've also submitted an amendment, which I'm just pulling up, and the clerk has it, which appears to have just disappeared off of my email. Oh, here it is. Thank you. And I'll just read this very quickly. Do I need to? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Do I need to? It's the first part says that council acknowledge, and I do think that this is incremental to what's contained in the report. So with that in mind, the first part reads that council acknowledges that the citywide plan provides an opportunity for post-plan legacy of a new level and approach to ongoing resident engagement, dialogue, and communication. And I'll speak to that because I think that's certainly an aspiration for a lot of people in terms of moving forward of how we engage with residents in the city. And then the second part of it reads further that the city's corporate communications team is well positioned to play a key role in furthering listening and engagement through the citywide plan process, as well as provide much needed human resources for the citywide plan team to support and expedite the work of this top council priority. Therefore, council encourages the refocus and deployment of communications personnel to support this direction. And then in speaking briefly to that piece, I noticed that staff had indicated that we have an aggressive timeline of 3 years. It's a key priority for council. There's a lot of workload and it's that staff have to deal with, and it's very helpful to have clear signals from staff. I recognize very fully that direction of staff is at the purview of the city manager, so I'm not suggesting that council direct, merely that we encourage. I do note that we often have reports that come to council where we have to endorse, for example, hiring of additional resource or a body. And I think here, given that of the significant expenditure, we've only been able to identify so far 2.4 million, I think, towards of in-house to support the effort, and we're looking at it annually for the first year, and we're looking at an overall price tag for this project of 17.9 million. Then I think this could have a couple of positives of really signaling a legacy vision for what we want to have in terms of output for how Vancouver engages with its residents. So that is the spirit of the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We need that seconded. Councillor Dominato. Okay, put us over on the amendment queue. Councillor Boyle, did I have you there? Or?
That's a holdover, but I do have a question. I'm just curious, and I was just about to dig back through notes. It's my understanding there's been a number of ways that staff have looked at redeploying or moving around staff from various departments to focus on this large project. And so it would be my understanding that some conversation about how the communications department focuses on this would already be part of what's being done by staff in terms of prioritizing time and projects. So through you as the chair, Mayor, I'd be happy to hear similarly if this is redundant or if this would be a shift in what is already the plan.
Okay, thanks. So it's basically the same question again. I'm going to have to take 5 minutes and just consult with staff and see if it is. But if I can have a mover for a 5. Thank you, Councillor Dejanova. Councillor Wiebe seconded. All in favor? Thanks very much. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, Council. So I've consulted and have a ruling on this one as well. This motion, as it's brought forward, the last sentence directs the refocusing and deployment of communications personnel, which are employees of the city, and they are under the direction of the city manager, who has authority to direct their conduct under the Board of Administration bylaw. Let me just open it here. Board of Administration bylaw number 4017. And I won't read the whole thing to you, but what it says under this is that the board is one person who is the city manager who has basically all the administrative ability. That is to direct and allocate staff. So under section 4.3 of our bylaws, if a motion conflicts with a law or bylaw, then it's out of order. And so that's my ruling on that one. That one's out of order too. Okay. Councillor Fry.
Is it possible to sever the last section and rule that out of order and vote on the first half of the amendment?
You can, yep, but when it's ruled out of order, it's not on the floor. So we're kind of on to the next speaker.
The entire thing?
Who actually is Councillor Kirby-Young, because she is, you still have the floor, Councillor Kirby-Young?
So if I still have the floor, then, and I'm not going to challenge the ruling of the chair because I don't think it will pass, but I will note that it did say encourage and not direct. But do I have the ability now at this point to amend my amendment?
You could resubmit.
Or if I can get a procedural clarification, because you had suggested you were ruling, you spoke to the last sentence?
Right.
Not that you were ruling the whole amendment out of order? So can you clarify if
I believe the first paragraph, I mean, you can put it forward as it is if you want, or take...
So if I can put forward the first paragraph, if I have the ability to do that, I guess my question was, do I need to do that as amendment to the amendment, Mr. Chair? Or
No, because it wasn't on the floor and it wasn't, it was ruled out of order, and
if I still have the floor, I would like
you
to
do.
put the first paragraph forward.
And it is in written form, right? And so you could have that seconded, and then we could go at it again. Councillor Weep, seconded? Okay, so I'll go back to the amendment queue, which I'm going to clear first, and then does anybody like to speak to this amendment? Councillor Carr.
Yes, very briefly, I very much appreciate this amendment, and I think that the people of the city have indicated many times and very openly about their concern around communications and how communications have been handled and their trust in the city around that. And so as we're approaching the citywide plan with a very different kind of communication, to move that as a take forward, I think is a very good suggestion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Weep.
Yeah, I'm also very supportive of this. I think the way we did the scoping exercise and the way we're continuing to move forward, it's changing the way we do the process. And I'm really looking forward to this journey. So I look forward to what can come as a post-plan legacy.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Swanson.
Well, I would hope that it would do that, but I don't know if it really will. So for me, it's kind of up in the air whether or not it'll do that. I don't think it's necessarily true to just put it in a statement like that. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, thanks very much. I don't see anybody else on the amendment queue, so we can call the vote. Waiting for you, Councillor Swanson. And that's passed with Councillor Swanson in opposition. Okay, so back to the main queue. Councillor Kirby-Young, do you have anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bly?
Thank you very much. I have an amendment I put forward.
Okay.
Come up on screen. I can speak to it while it's happening. So the amendment itself is to ensure that public engagement process includes adequate and accessible information to frame existing rationale and trade-offs of current policy, including but not limited to the protection of public views. And actually, that's an edited, I sent another revised amendment to the clerks. There was two, and
Saying there's different text then? Is this another one? Oh, okay.
I can speak to it while it's coming. I can speak to it while it's coming up. And I just want to start by saying thank you to staff for responding to questions around this, and just to set the stage for why this is being brought forward. I think it's in the spirit of we don't know what we don't know. So when we go out to the public, I think we take for granted the natural environment around us. And so distinct from placemaking, city building, that sort of idea, the natural environment already exists, and we've built a city within that. And I think it was quite telling when Mr. Kelly presented last week that we are sort of in this amazing natural environment, and it is what makes Vancouver what it is, and the special place to be. And I think that we take for granted what we see and how changes in that, in the context of the citywide plan, can be altered. So it's really just to highlight that there will be trade-offs. So it's not actually to prioritize one over the other, it's just to be explicit that they exist. There's 100 view corridors. So this is not just about view cones protecting views in the North Shore Mountains, but that there's 100 view corridors that are listed on the city website that people may not know about unless we really bring that to the foreground in terms of our conversation. And I think all of this is going to be about trade-offs, so I felt it really important that we articulate it in here, and that's why I'm bringing this motion forward.
Okay. Second, Councillor Kirby-Young, over the amendment queue. Don't see anybody. Oh, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Bly for bringing this forward. I think she articulated the rationale very well, and I think that this is really a quintessential element of what makes Vancouver, Vancouver. And when people ask you where you're from, and you say Vancouver, they say, wow, it's really beautiful. And I think there's some things that are embedded in our DNA that we want to be very cognizant of moving into this, just as we've talked about the importance of co-creation or the sense of place in our neighborhood. So I think that we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that there are some core decisions that we have made as a city that have retained the spirit of who we are, and our natural beauty is a big part of that. So I'm very happy to support the amendment, and I thank Councillor Bly for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody else in the queue, so we can vote on this one. And that's passed unanimously. Okay, great. Councillor Bly, anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you. I believe the clerk has my amendments. And I did hear from staff, but I still take exception with some of the conclusions that were drawn. So this motion, if you just try and get it there so we can read it, I'm adding on to A with additional amendments. I've said many times that we need to press pause on other plans and processes that are ongoing or have predated this council, and the purpose of the citywide plan was in large part to be able to start fresh and be working towards a plan that reflects the opinions and aspirations of the people that live and work here. So in that vein, A is looking at neighborhood-based, using traditional neighborhood boundaries. One of my concerns has been that I've seen exercises that have been redrawing neighborhood boundaries in planning exercises, and I want to ensure that our traditional neighborhoods are respected. Second, that planning programs like the Broadway planning program should be put on hold and integrated into the larger planning process and not be handled as a separate exercise. Thirdly, that the moderate income housing pilot program is similarly put on hold, and I have heard what staff has said. I'm taking exception with it. That we, again, should undertake this exercise and not just continue doing this program in particular, but also Rental 100. I also have brought up a number of times my concern about the difference between projections and targets, in particular in Housing Vancouver, the suggestion that we need to build 72,000 new housing units, which exceeds reasonable population projections. Staff to report back. Again, I think it's regrettable that we did not continue with the citywide planning program that was undertaken under the leadership by former Director of Planning Anne McAfee. And I've suggested, and it has been circulated a number of times, the underlying terms of reference, which I think we should continue to use moving forward. G, neighborhood residents associations to be specifically included as stakeholders. This is not an arbitrary, we're going to consult with the public. You know, this is the public are not a construct. It's us. It's the people that live here, and these neighborhood organizations are ongoing and include the people that live here. And then finally, that staff from various departments will be called upon to provide information or advice. However, where they have a special interest to advocate, this would be separately identified as staff input and not included in community feedback as part of the planning process. The reason for this is I've been to far too many listening sessions where we go in saying that we're going to listen to what the people say, and then what I hear coming out the other end is entirely different. So it's, again, I know this is going to be a bit confrontational, but I think these points need to be said going into the exercise in order for me to be able to support something that I have been working towards for many years and feel passionately about. So that's my amendment.
Just have a question for you. Is the idea that this is to strike and replace, you're replacing or you're adding? Or
I'm adding.
You're adding to A.
To A.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to just get clear. If we could look at just pull the report up so we can see is there an existing A though? I'll be right with you, Councillor Dejanova. So there already is an A in the recommendations, Councillor Hardwick. Are you suggesting we replace the A?
Scroll up just a little bit there. See, that is the A as outlined in this report with the following clarifications and amendments.
And then to continue on with the other B to F as well, to include those? Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so I need a seconder for this one. Okay, seeing no seconder, then we're moving on to the next speaker, unless you've got 30 seconds left, unless there's something else you'd like to add to the debate.
No, just my deep disappointment.
Okay, thank you very much. On to Councillor Dejanova.
No, that's fine. That was a holdover.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Boyle.
I had just put my name on the list to say I don't have an amendment. I want to just name what great work I think we have in front of us. There was a huge amount of work in listening to council and listening to speakers and shaping what I think is putting us in a really exciting direction to think about the city that we want into the future, and as others pointed out really well, to build a legacy of a renewed trust and a new kind of engagement across the city and how we look to the future together. And I particularly am really excited about the depth of reconciliation that is embedded in how we're going about this report, as well as the commitment to engaging folks who we know experience a lot of systemic barriers to participation. I'm really excited about hearing from that many more voices in where we go as a city, knowing that there are lots of folks who just don't have the time to sign up for public hearings and speak out in our regular system. So excited about all those voices and where they may lead us into the future.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weeb.
Similar. I think that the scoping exercise was a great example of how staff have listened and recognized of how to really have a blank slate and take this in a different direction. So far I'm excited about where the journey's going, and I know that we're all a little bit nervous because it is such a big overtaking of what could look like. I know the public's nervous because some of the processes that have happened in the past, but I think there is an excitement. I think the city's ready for this. I think we're all looking forward to what fall and what the big launch looks like, because this is a very exciting time where we can really do transformational components to the city. I like the way a lot of it was shaped, in the sense there's not a lot here. It's just saying we're setting up a platform, we're here to listen, and I'm excited to hear what the public has to say. So very supportive of this, and I look forward to how this journey progresses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kirby-Young, we've got about 2.5 minutes left.
Thank you. I want to thank staff for the work on this report. I know it's a huge undertaking. It's been a century, I think, since 100 years was stated, and before, since Vancouver previously undertook a formal or the original citywide planning effort. And then there was one subsequently that was noted in the report that got underway, and it lost momentum and fizzled out, and it was cancelled in 2010 by a previous council. So I share that, not to not be positive about this, but quite the opposite. I think that there is a huge opportunity to bring people together on this one. I did note that there's a lot of, I think, uncertainty and unsettlement and division in the city. And I think a lot of that comes down to when people are dealing with really core issues that affect them fundamentally, like affordability, or things are happening in their neighborhood and there's a pace of change, that creates discomfort for people. And I know that people want to get to a place where there is more understanding and certainty around what will be happening in their neighborhoods. And I really, truly believe and hope that this is the vehicle to get there. Having said that, I think everybody needs to take a bit of a leap of faith and have some skin in the game with us, because we don't know what we don't know yet. It's going to be an iterative process. I appreciate the fact that staff was honest about the fact that what we're being asked to buy in today is, yes, certainly a vision, but year one. They've identified some staff savings. We do have it within the 2019 budget to begin this work, and you will come back and check in with council. And I think it's incumbent upon council to really kind of play that role in saying, are we moving along and meeting some of those goals? Are we pacing? Are we delivering on some of the aspirations that we had for this plan? And I hope that the residents will provide, I know that their trust has been broken and people are uncertain, as I mentioned, but I hope that they will truly and genuinely take the spirit of this plan and participate, because we really want to hear those voices. I also just want to address very briefly the question about, or the comment that's been made around neighborhoods versus starting citywide. And I used the analogy when I was on the park board at the community centers, when we brought everybody together first to figure out what the common platform of values were. And that sort of is a spirit of unity. And then the subsequent phase of that was really identifying through a secondary process what was unique to each community center, which reflected their neighborhood. And I think if we can take that spirit, then we have the opportunity to really deliver on this plan. And so for those reasons, I will be supporting it. And I really do appreciate the work of staff and the ability, I think, to be iterative and nimble as we progress, because I think that's going to be core to success. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dejanova, you've got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. I don't think I'll need all of it. I just want to, first of all, thank staff very much, and also acknowledge Mr. Kelly, who's not here, and I hope staff will pass my thanks on to him. And also thank council. I think that this has been something that we, hopefully, it feels like this, we're going to look back on this moment, and I'm hoping that we'll say that this is really, this was the start of moving forward with a plan for the citywide plan, a plan to engage people, and I think that there's a lot that's missing because it's not our job to fill that in. And I just wanted to, I did write an op-ed the night before the election, and I think it really rings true to a lot of what we've talked about today. So an excerpt from what that was: meaningful consultation and public engagement need to continue past Election Day. We must develop strategies where busy parents can learn about projects in their neighborhood, hello Facebook ads, and be given meaningful opportunities for input and to have their voices heard. We need to continue meeting after meeting to earn the respect of our bosses, the people of our city. Regardless of partisanship, the mayor and city councilors need to step outside of City Hall. Building a family-friendly Vancouver can't be achieved unless we step outside of council chambers. It is in the neighborhoods that we will find the families and the seniors who rely the most on the decisions we make for Vancouver. I also thought about weekend meetings and an open mic hour, but thankfully staff have found a way forward that we might not need that. So it really did ring true to me. That was something that was posted on the Georgia Strait website, 11/16, the night before the election. And here I stand today, and I get a little bit emotional about it because I think that this hopefully will be a citywide plan that's not just for us, it's not just for the next generation, but it's for generations to come. So thank you.
Thank you. On to Councillor Fry. Just 3 minutes left.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, staff. And it's so great to see so many different departments here representing staff. And I think that's a real indication of what this plan is about and the breaking down of silos and the working together. Mr. Kelly, if you're watching online from wherever you are on vacation, good job, sir. I appreciate all the work that you guys did to meet with us beforehand and to really sort of like get a sense of what it is the council is looking for. And I think council together, we did some really smart amendments that are really going to contribute to this. And I'm reminded that this is just the beginning of this plan and that we're actually embarking upon a great journey. And, you know, when I first decided to run for city council back in 2014, March the 12th maybe of 2014, it was on the tail end of the Downtown East Side local area plan and my frustration with how that plan actually manifested and stuff. So this is sort of a culmination of where I was coming from and where I continue to want to see us go. And as a holistic approach to how we're going to grow this great city and make a city for everybody, I'm really excited about this first step in that process and what the next few years will bring to us. So again, thank you, staff, for really working hard to get this ball rolling, and thank you.
Thanks very much. On to Councillor Hardwick. 30 seconds.
Well, don't I get time for a sum up? That was from my amendments
this is still
from
the
before.
debate. This is still the debate section, so everybody has 5 minutes, and any amendments or whatever you moved are part of that 5 minutes.
So we don't get to do a sum up at the end?
You've got 20 seconds.
Okay, well, again, I've been pushing and ran on a citywide plan. It's been a passion of mine for years, and I am deeply afraid that it's headed in the wrong direction. And that's a hard thing for me to say, having worked as hard as I have and as long as I have towards this. And if that's all I get to say, I wish it were otherwise, and hope springs eternal. But I think that we have to really be listening to the people and not come in with a prescriptive framework and then shoehorn people's opinions into it, which is kind of what I've been seeing.
Thank you. On to Councillor Dominato. What have you got left here? And you've got a full clock, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to start, thank you to staff for the work they've done, obviously flowing from an earlier motion. Do I acknowledge, I appreciated that as council, we had an opportunity to meet informally just to sort of give our perspective. And I think that has added value in terms of what we've seen come to council today. I'm really excited by the opportunity this presents us as a city. I'm a big believer in planning. I think that I've talked about this before, is that when you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And I think that we have incredibly great work that's happening in the city, but I think it will help engage our citizens, rebuild trust. I think I'm a firm believer as well in public policy development. It happens at all levels. It's grassroots. It's hearing from residents about what their vision is for the city. It's also comes from those that you elect to help guide some of that vision. It comes from the public servants that who are some of the experts in this field. And so it really is a collaborative effort, and I firmly believe that will take place in terms of engaging all residents and also looking at the fact that we're a growing city and that we need to plan for the future, and I think that's what this is about. And I think that
I did want to acknowledge one of the things that we did discuss in here when we heard from Ann McAfee is around the city plan and some of the challenges with initially around engagement and how critical that is, but also around implementation and some of the challenges in terms of things not quite being finished. And so, as you know, in meeting with you, I had identified that I would love to see us go faster. I'm going to say it again because I'm not making amendments, but I'd love I think the engagement's important, but if we can bring something sooner, I think that would be great. But I do look forward to this journey in terms of what it will bring to the city and the engagement of our residents and planning for the future. So thank you.
Thanks very much. I have myself on the list, although there's other speakers. So I just wanted to just reflect a little bit when my first professional job was working here at the city on the last city plan in the 1990s. And it's weird to be standing here as we're embarking on this new voyage. I remember Ann McAfee was the head of that process, and it was a real honor to have her speak to us and to offer some guiding principles. And I am really excited about what we're going to do here. I think staff have put an amazing amount of work in. Council has been certainly very, very thoughtful in terms of how we're getting the canoe off the shore. But it is a complete. It's an unknown journey, and it's really exciting. I think I think it's a good time for us as a council. We've had our kind of 8 months to kind of get to know each other and get through a whole bunch of voting and amendments and talking, and now we get to go to the public with as seasoned veterans out there, talking to them about how they want to see the city in 40 years, or I like the whole 7 generations, 100 years idea. So I'm also really proud that the principles that we have entrenched in this, we have reconciliation at the core of this plan, which I think is essential, but also through Councillor Swanson's amendment to our Gender Equity Act, we'll also be building this strategy using an intersectional lens, as we will all our policies and reviewing all our departments. So that is so essential, and I know staff will be including that in the information that goes to the public, because that is not just what we're doing for one plan or one policy, but for all our policies and all our departments. So I think that's something to be incredibly proud of. Yeah, so I know the public's excited about this. I think that Vancouver's ready for this. I think it would maybe take a little bit of the stress out of the housing crisis, that people can think about not just their immediate needs that we are dealing with, I think, in an effective way, but also imagining what the future is going to look like as we all move forward together. So again, wanted to thank everybody for what they're doing, and look forward to the next debate we have around this after we get some more feedback. So thanks everybody, and on to Councillor Swanson.
Yes, thanks everybody, and thanks for the work that the staff has put into this. I'm really torn about the plan. On one hand, I'm a member of COPE, and COPE wants a citywide plan, and it would also be good to have a plan where we know how much affordable housing would go where, and how much it would cost, and how we're going to get it, and how we could get really affordable transit, and how we could do our share for climate change, and a plan to end homelessness and poverty, and listen to everybody's ideas on how to get there. I'd love that. But will this get us there? And it's $20 million. And we already know that 2/3 of Vancouver residents want action on housing affordability, homelessness, and social issues. Couldn't we just focus on those and do it without spending $20 million, or use that $20 million to advance those causes? What really disturbs me is that this plan so far, ignores the last part of the council motion to report back on how to prevent renoviction, demoviction, and gentrification. Beefing up the TRPP a little bit isn't doing that. It's not doing anything about preventing renoviction. It's not doing anything about preventing gentrification. It will still compensate people who've been demovicted a little bit more, but not enough to make up for their increased rent for very long. So currently, there are community plans like Grandview and Mount Pleasant are causing a lot of gentrification. Couldn't we at least have some measures to prevent displacement of residents and businesses during the plan? I think that a plan that's informed by equity, accessibility, and spatial justice, and the fundamental right to housing has to engage meaningfully with gentrification and displacement. because the ones who are being displaced are the ones who are the most affected by the lack of equity. I'm worried about the renters in the C2 zones and other areas not covered by the rental housing ODP. Will they be turfed out in the next 4 years before the plan is done? We already know what we need. A lot of the so-called equity-seeking groups have already done their own plans. The Carnegie Action Project, Red Women Rising, Murdered, Missing and Women, Indigenous Women and Girls, the Chinatown People's Vision. Do we need to keep listening? Couldn't we just implement these reports? Would the real way to be an equity-seeking city be to actually implement the work that these groups have already done? So I think this report is for approval of the first stage, the listening stage. My partner Sandy used to always say, the most important thing is asking the right question. I don't know what question is going to be asked in this listening stage. Do we need more? Are we just going to ask people what's bugging them and then write it down and take notes? If we plan to address inequity, we have to point out which factors are creating the inequity, or a process that encourages those factors has to be revealed and discussed so we can tackle it. It can't all just be smoothed over. So I still don't know exactly what the plan will achieve. It's kind of like $20 million for this big mystery that everyone is so hopeful about. And I've been burnt by a couple of plans, so I'm skeptical about it. So I'm going to ask to sever, and I'll vote for some of the motions. And maybe if it comes back at another stage, I'll vote for the rest of it. But I'm waiting to see if people are really protected from displacement, if we really do push for people who are poor, people who are marginalized, people who are racialized, if we really do involve them. And I'm a wait-and-see person, so that's how I'm going to vote.
Thanks very much. Councillor Bly.
Much.
And you just have 2.5 minutes, too.
Yeah, I won't need that. I have lots and lots to say, and I'm not one to repeat myself, I hope, and if I do, let me know. But just really thank you to staff for involving us in the process so far in the way that we have been involved. So the workshop, the initial kickoff workshop, I think that alignment really comes from getting all of that deep roots and foundation and groundwork laid before we really go anywhere. And so I think that happening the way that it did at the beginning and the one-to-one meetings and then broader hearing from the public and where we are today, I have great excitement about the plan. I have a lot of anticipation. We will have some really interesting debates and conversations and decisions to make over the next 3 years. But I think at the end of the day, my hope is that this plan is something that brings people together, doesn't divide people, and that's the intention that I'm holding for it as one of city council members, as one, and I just really hope that the public see that as well, is that listening stage, this first stage, is about bringing people together. And we talked about empathy at the beginning of this presentation last week, and it's that other people will just see things differently than the way you do, and they all count. And so all positions, all opinions count. And there has to be some flexibility. There has to be some trade-offs. There has to be some way that people can bend a little to make room for everybody. So I really hold that this plan is going to do that, and I will keep that picture in the future, even if others may not be able to do that at that moment, knowing that at the end we'll all be there together to vote on this. And so I'm excited. I can't wait to hear more, and also be at whatever engagement opportunities we get to be at to be with the public and hear what people have to say. So enthusiastically supporting the motion as amended and look forward to next steps. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I see Councillor Carr, you're the final speaker on the list for the full 5 minutes and the mover of the motion.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm excited too, Councillor Bly. But I wanted to start by thanking Mr. Kelly, wherever you are, and all of staff and everybody who came to speak to us, who has written to us, who has sat down and met with us. I just thank you, and this is just a starting point. And as Councillor,
won't go into that yet. So, to me, this is really it's about time. Like, we have not had a city plan that was completed since 1928. City plan in the 1990s had some higher level overall plans and a number of neighborhood visions, but it didn't get completed. So this is our first time, if you can imagine, the city of Vancouver, the first time we are embarking upon a process to get us to a completed city-wide plan. Councillor Swanson, you asked, what is the question? I believe the question is, what kind of city do we want Vancouver to be? That is really the driving question. What do we want this city, all of us together, what do we want the city to be? There's people who have worried about whether or not this process is going to be the right process. But and maybe they're just like worried because there has been a great deal of skepticism and distrust and worry about engagement, public engagement, and decision making. So I understand that, but I just, like Councillor Hardwick said, hope springs eternal. My hope springs eternal in my breast that that will be overcome as we move forward. When people talk about there being too much of a framework right now, I look at this, I read this report so thoroughly and said, what is it that people could disagree with? Where are we starting from in terms of this process? We're starting from an understanding of goals. And those goals, who can disagree with these goals? That we want a collective long-range vision. We want to tackle big, urgent problems. We want to tackle it together in a collaborative way. This is so just general at this point. The details are so much up for grabs by who gets involved. And there is such a willingness in this plan among staff and this council to listen to those who come forward with their ideas. I expect virtually anything that has been said about what kind of city we want to be is up for discussion by the public, which to me is incredibly exciting. This is the moment in time where I believe Vancouver needs this plan more than any time in the past, largely because the issues, our problems are big. The affordability, lack of it, the climate crisis, transportation issues, the need for equity, reconciliation. These are huge issues, and this is the time when together we can move forward solutions. So at this point, I just want to end by saying I also am keen, as Councillor Bly said, keen to just get going, and I believe that the people of this city, from whatever walk of life, will also only get more excited the more involved they get. So it's our job to open that process for involvement and to engage people in helping us open that process for involvement, whether they be local community groups or whomever, to really move this forward in that way which leaves no person uninvolved. And where people in the end can see their mark in the plan. They can say, I participated, I contributed, and I can see that this end result, this vision, has my thoughts, my heart in it. So I'm excited, and I really thank staff for all the work you've done on this.
Thank you so much. And that's it for speakers. So I'll call the vote. Right, and we have a motion to sever. Yep, thanks. Sorry about that. So we'll move to sever, and I guess we'll just go clause by clause, starting with clause A. That's up on the screen. So all in favor of A, please vote now. Or opposed. We have Councillor Swanson and Councillor Hardwick in opposition, and that has passed. So I'll call the vote on letter B. Waiting for Councillor Hardwick. And that has passed with Councillor Hardwick and Swanson in opposition. And C. Councillor Kirby-Young is waiting. Thanks very much. That's passed with Councillor Hardwick in opposition. And we go to D. And that's passed with Councillor Hardwick and Swanson in opposition. On to E. Just waiting for Councillor DeGenova and Kirby-Young. There we go. That's passed with Councillor Hardwick in opposition. And we're on F. That's passed with Councillor Hardwick in opposition. We're on G. Just waiting for Councillor Swanson. That's passed with Councillor Hardwick in opposition. And H. And that's passed with Councillor Hardwick in opposition. I think that's it, isn't it? Is that all the clauses? Okay, thanks very much, Council. That's it. We're off to the races with City Plan. Good stuff. Hooray. Okay, thank you very much, Council. Now we have moved the two administrative reports to tomorrow at 4 o'clock because this is a surprise. We're done early. So all we have left to do is a motion to recess. Okay, Councillor Fry, Councillor Dominato. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Councillor Dominato.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do need to, and I'm sorry I have to do this on the fly now, but I do need to seek a leave for an hour and a half from 4 to 5:30 tomorrow because I'm chairing a meeting. And so I see that council starting at 4, correct?
Sorry. I think I've been informed that that's not necessary.
Okay.
To request leave, so we're good.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, thanks. And as so we have Councillor Fry moved to recess. We have another Councillor Boyle. All in favor of recessing? Thanks very much. Any opposed? No, that's it. Thanks very much. See you tomorrow at 4.